Now, rewind to around 18 months ago, Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Marco Rubio, and others established legislation mandating the creation of a UFO office in the Pentagon called AARO, or All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. And of course, UFOs also being used interchangeably with UAP, or Unidentified Anomalous Phenomenon. Anyway, the AARO office was charged with investigating and reporting to Congress on what is happening in our skies. That is led by Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick. Now, one would think the head of the Pentagon's UFO program would have directly and formally reached out to David Grush to get him to testify. I mean, that's what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick would have you believe. But in an off-camera interview with the press this October, Kirkpatrick stated, quote, "So the last time I believe I spoke with Mr. Grush was when I was the J2 at U.S. Space Command about 5 years ago, and it was not on this topic." Bullshit. Now, we have interviewed a whole range of people, over 30 people now. I think we've interviewed most of the people that he may have talked to, but we don't know that. And we have extended an invitation at least 4 or 5 times now for him to come over in the last 8 months or so, and we have been declined. Okay, so now we were one of the first to report that Kirkpatrick was retiring, and we postulated that Kirkpatrick was trying to clean up the reputation for his incompetence by throwing Grush under the bus. The Sean Kirkpatrick Image Overhaul Tour took a stop at Politico Today with an interview where Kirkpatrick had this to say, quote, "David Grush is a unique instance in that he has refused to come on and share any of that information. We still can't get him to come in. I've got 5 different people who have gone to talk to him to get him to come in. And the answers have always been everything from we're not cleared to it would jeopardize his whistleblower protections to we can't just get to why can't we just get the information that he shared from the IG. It's every excuse that I've heard. Why not come in?" And that's been a challenge now because here we are. We're about to put out Volume 1 of the Historical Review, which I believe captures most all of the people that he's spoken with, but I can't say that 100% because I can't hear what he thinks he has. If he has evidence, I need to know what that is. That's a load of bullshit. That's what I'm here to tell you about. So we reported last month that no one from AARO, including Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, had officially reached out to Dave or his attorney, which is the absolute truth. So a week and a half ago, Kirkpatrick said he hadn't spoken to Dave in 5 years, which is a lie. And then today he flip-flops, says Grush has given us every excuse in the book. So Sean, what is it? You can't have it both ways. I mean, in one interview, you say you haven't spoken with him, but then in the other interview, you're saying you did. So now, look, at first I thought, this was just Sean trying to clean up his image post-retirement. I mean, after all, Grush and others have made it apparent that Kirkpatrick is nothing short of an incompetent fool who cannot plan his way out of a paper bag. But it's really bigger than that. This is part of a smear campaign run by the Pentagon to discredit David Grush, which can be laid squarely at the feet of Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks. So, friends, think about this. Kirkpatrick answers directly to Secretary Hicks. Kirkpatrick runs around posting bitchy-ass non-official posts on his LinkedIn page about Grush and then goes on multiple media outlets to lie and slander Grush. Hicks, this is actually to DOD Inspector General Robert Storch, who has an open reprisal investigation regarding whistleblower David Grush. Mr. Storch, you are witnessing firsthand Pentagon officials lying, slandering, and defaming a decorated veteran. It's un-American, and I mean, come on, man. If that's not retaliation, I don't know what it is. But you know what? It's bullshit, and it's got to stop. All right, enough of that. I'm going to lower my blood pressure here. So in 2008, his book UFOs and Nukes: Extraordinary Encounters at Nuclear Weapon Sites documented hundreds of cases of UFOs tampering and or disabling our strategic nuclear weapons. One of the most famous cases described in Hastings' book is about our next guest who recently testified to the Pentagon's Aero Office, which is, I don't know, it's a shit show over there with Kirkpatrick running things. Anyway, please welcome retired United States Air Force First Lieutenant Bob Jacobs. Mr. Jacobs, thank you for joining us.
Sure, you're entirely welcome. By the way, I made it all the way to the captain before I got booted out.
All right. Well, thanks for holding my feet to the fire there, and thank you for your service, and also thank you for coming forward to talk about this really important topic. So I have to ask. So this is the first time since 2007 that you have, or in 7 years, sorry, that you've come on. What made you decide it was time to come back into the public light and talk about your story?
Very simply, the crap that's going on with AARO. You said it's a shit show. This Kirkpatrick guy is clearly a shill for the cabal that's running the whole thing. I can't say anything else about him. When I was told, I was given the opportunity by Robert Hastings. He said that someone back there, being DC, had gotten hold of him and wanted to know if any of the people in his book, UFOs and Nukes, would come forward and testify to AARO. Robert said he gave them a list of several of us, and one of them was me. So AARO called me and interviewed me. It wasn't Kirkpatrick. It was a guy named Rich. I think his name was Rich. And the interview went smashingly well. I thought, golly, I told the interviewer, in fact, I said, I've been waiting for almost 50 years for someone to listen to my testimony in the government. And he said, well, we are now. I was elated. I thought, golly, this is real. Their disclosure can't be far away now if we were going to be interviewed and then be heard by Congress. Well, I watched the interview with Kirkpatrick and Senator Gillibrand and her committee. The first thing out of his mouth was, we have found no evidence of extraterrestrial activity. I went skyrocketing. I went ballistic. I called Robert and I said, what the hell is going on here? Who is this guy? This can't be real. He's calling me a liar. He's calling Major Mansman, who verified my story, a liar. He's calling Bob Salas a liar, and Dave Schendley, and we're all being called liars now by this idiot. I thought AARO was supposed to be taking testimony, coalescing it, and giving it to Congress so that we would finally get some activity on this craziness that's been going on with me since 1964. That's what got me to go on, and now it's what got me to come and testify with you that I'm sick of this. We in the UFO community, I guess, I'm not into any community. I live out in the Ozark Mountains and kind of live by myself with my wife and my dog. But all of us have an interest in the reality of the biggest story in history in humankind. We are not alone. For God's sake, what could be more important than that? And we've not been alone for quite a long time, it turns out. And so when we get an opportunity to testify to our government, of course, government would never lie to us, would they? Of course not. So it is true. So I went down to Vandenberg, and there, the commander of that unit, Major Clement, had been a classmate of mine at USC. He was there under a government program to do a master's degree in something, so we had known each other in the cinema department. So he said, glad to have you on board, Bob. And here's your assignment. I thought, oh, good, I'm going to the documentary unit and make documentaries and just have wonderful time here in the Air Force. He said, we're putting you in charge of photo-optical instrumentation. That is high-speed instrumentation photography of every missile launched at Vandenberg to go down the Western Test Range. This brand of photography required cameras to run at a minimum of 400 frames per second up to 1,200 frames per second in certain instances and 1,000 frames per second in others. We had to provide the engineers at Boeing and other places second-by-second coverage of that missile launching so they can see what was going on with it. That's what I did at Vandenberg. I had 100 men working for me. I say men because there weren't any women working at that point in the Air Force part that I was in. And I had a great career there until one day something very strange happened. Up in the 1st Strategic Aerospace Division, that's the SAC headquarters that ran the base, I got a call from a major that I knew quite well. His name was Florence J. Mansman. He said, "Can you come up here, Bob? I want to talk to you." So I went up to his office, and he offered me a cup of coffee, and we sat around. He said, "Have you ever been to Big Sur?" And I said, "Big Sur?" Well, as it turned out, when I was in high school, I was a bit of a beatnik. I had a little MGTD, and I used to drive up to Big Sur and go to the Pinty Cafe and drink coffee and listen to beatnik poets. So I said, "Yes, sir, I know all about Big Sur." He said, "Well, here's the deal. There's a place up there in the Forest Service runs. It's up near Anderson Peak, and we're going to want you to go up there and see if you can establish a tracking station up there, so we can look back at Vandenberg." Now the deal is, the California coastline is rather like this. If you're looking back south, Southern California goes back in like this. So if you're up here in the north part and you look south, you're looking back to the east to see where Vandenberg was. Well, from that viewpoint, a missile taking off, we could watch the side view of it going from first stage, second stage, third stage, and ejection. So I took one of our M45 tracking mounts and some cameras and a couple guys, Airman Williams and Tech Sergeant Dodd. We went up, we set up the tracking set, and we waited for them to launch a missile, and they finally launched one, and I was happy to call and say, "We got it. We can see all 3 stages of powered flight." They were delighted. Boeing was happy, and so forth. So we ran that site for a couple of 3 launches, and a while later, Major Mansman said, "Come on up to my office, Bob." So I went up to his office. He said, "We have a new piece of equipment coming in. It's called the Boston University Telescope." I said, "Telescope?" He said, "Yes, sir. It has a focal length, an effective focal length of 2,500 inches. My photographer's mind went, "Whoa," because the normal length on a 35mm camera is 1 inch. So with that telescope, which is a catadioptic folding Cassegrainian telescope, like they have up at Palomar and someplace. So I said, "Okay, what shall I do?" He said, "I want you to go up there and clear off a space, and in about 3 days, it's going to come up to where you are." I went, "Okay." So I took my men with me, and we took our tracking mount up there again, and we pulled it up, and 3 days later, sure enough, a large telescope being hauled by an 18-wheel tractor came walking up the Forest Service Road up to our place, and we set it in sight on our shelf at just a wide spot in the road, overlooking happily the home of Kim Novak, who had a lovely swimming pool down there, and we all enjoyed watching her swim. But anyway, I digress.
Maybe we don't want to go there.
Look, we're in the Air Force. We're doing important work. We have fun. We joke a lot, and we carry on and so forth. Well, they brought the telescope up. They set it up, and Major Mansman came up, and a couple other people came up to check it out, look at it, and make sure it was working, and it was. And then we waited for the next launch. Everybody went home except my men, I, and the 3-man crew that operated the telescope. I got a radio call saying, "Get ready tomorrow morning. We're launching the device that we'd like you to photograph for us." So I said, "All right." It turned out to be an Atlas D missile with a dummy nuclear warhead on top. It was going downrange as part of a Nike Zeus program to test can we shoot down Russian missiles if they're aimed at us. It was crap. So we got up that morning, and there was a fog bank down low in the along the coastline, and we listened on the radio, and we heard 5, 4, 3 ignition liftoff, and we were all pointing down to Brooklyn straight at Vandenberg, and suddenly out of that fog popped a missile. It was a beautiful sight in the sunlight. We locked our tracking instruments onto it, and off it went. We watched it go through all 3 stages of powered flight and then disappear from view to us off downrange, 100, 200 miles. And we cheered and jumped up and down and said, hey, we got it. Because the guys on the telescope said, yeah, we got that. Of course, we had no idea what they got because they were recording a kinescope recording, taking a 35 millimeter camera and photographing the face of an image orthogon tube, which was covered up by a black shroud, so we couldn't see what it had got. I took the film down to Vandenberg, and 2 days later, I got a call from Major Mansman. He said, can you come up to my office? And I said, yes, sir. So I came up to his office. I walked in the door, and there in his office was a table with a 16 millimeter projector on it with a film on it. 2 guys over in the corner with civilian suits on, gray suits, who stood in the corner and stared at me. And Major Mansman, he came over and said, sit down, Lieutenant. And I sat down next to the table with the projector on it. He said, now watch this. He turned it on, and I looked, and as it came on, it was an amazing shot. From 128 miles where we were, we photographed as the frame came like this, the 3 nozzles of the Atlas D missile filled that frame. And it was absolutely sparkling clear. And we watched it as it took off. And we followed it all the way through 3 stages of powered flight and all the way up into the heavens and downrange where we lost it to view. Where on the ground we had lost it to view. Here on the film was something we didn't expect. The telescope had kept rolling after we lost it to view. And what it got was this. In the frame, which had our warhead and our nose cone flying along at 8,000 miles an hour, like that. As we watched it, there was a discharge of something very metallic and shiny. It turned out to be aluminum foil that we launched in front of the warhead so that the stupid Russians would shoot their missile at the chaff and not the warhead, which we ejected into a slightly higher orbit. As that was flying along at 8,000 miles an hour, I was dumbstruck, going, wow, this is incredible. But then it got even more incredible. Into that frame flew another object following us. And it flew in. Now we're going 8,000 miles an hour. This thing came into the frame, flew up to the dummy warhead, shot a beam of light at it, went around like this to the top of the warhead, shot a beam of light down at it, proceeded out here in front of it, 8,000 miles an hour, right? Boom, shot another beam of light at it, and went down like this and shot another beam of light at it, and then zipped out of the frame faster than it had come in. At that point, the dummy warhead tumbled out of the frame. A UFO shot down a dummy nuclear warhead. That's what happened.
Now, speaking to Robert Hastings, and he was suggesting that we show the animated portion of his documentary, and I want to play this here because it reinforces or sort of illustrates what you saw. And I'm curious how you feel, how accurate you would say this simulation is, or this whatever you want to call it. Anyway, here it is.
That is the nose cone opening up, the chaff flying out in front of it, and then the warhead coming out, and see a little rocket motor on the bottom of it, ignites it, and it shoots it into a slightly higher orbit than the chaff. That would certainly fool the Russians. We could go down and obliterate Moscow. This is a better idea of what it looked like to the camera, because this came into the frame. It was a saucer-shaped object with a dome on top of it. It shot a beam of light at the warhead, hit it, flew up over it as I described, hit it with another beam of light, flew in front of it, hit another beam of light, and another beam of light from the bottom, and zipped out of the frame. The warhead tumbled out of the frame. Now,
go ahead, sorry.
that animation is exaggerated size. The object to us on our eye was relatively small. That would be what you saw in there would be if we could magnify the small object. That's what it would have looked like.
And the light that came out of it, did it appear like how you would characterize a laser? Like, what was the quality of it? Was it something you had seen before?
I'd never seen anything like this light, this particular light. It wasn't a laser because it wasn't straight. It wasn't a directed energy beam. It was more like miniature lightning bolts or like a plasma because it shivered as it went. Lasers, as you know, are straight lines. They don't move around and vibrate. This thing vibrated. These lights vibrated.
Did the object, the saucer-shaped object, did it have any lights, or was it just strictly metallic as it was shown in the video?
We couldn't make out any lights on it. It looked like pretty much like we've done in this animation. Mind you, it was much smaller than the animation is.
Understood. So, okay,
Major Mansman, who was a fighter pilot and who knew about aiming and shooting out of flying objects, he was the one who, with a magnifying glass, a high-powered magnifying glass, took the 35 millimeter film and examined frame by frame what you just saw. He's the one who described in detail the exact shape of the object and the chap and all of that stuff you were looking at. When I gave my first testimony in written form, I got jeered, laughed at, and called an idiot, and all kinds of other things, which people love to call me anyway. And after my letter appeared in the MUFON Journal, describing what I just described to you, Major Mansman came out and said, what Lieutenant Jacobs described in that article is absolutely what happened. He verified my testimony. Now, people can throw aspersions at me because, frankly, I don't give a damn. I'm too old to care anymore, number one, and I never cared in the first place. You can call me a liar all you want, unless you say it to my face, in which case I'll deck you. But you can't call an American hero like Major Florence Mansman a liar. He did not lie. He did not lie. He wouldn't lie. When he verified my testimony, I felt exonerated. Like, yes, thank you, Florence. Thank you so much for not making me look like an idiot any more than I am.
Now let's rewind back to the interview. So you go walking into this room. They show you this film. Firstly, any idea who these two men in gray were? Where they were from?
Major Mansman confirmed what I thought. I said they were CIA, and that's what he said he thought they were as well. Remember, this is 1964,
and
we didn't have as many alphabetized organizations around in '64.
So
here, let me finish out with what he told me when I was leaving. He said to me, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." He said, "Then what was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO." He said, "You are never to say that again. As far as you're concerned, Lieutenant Jacobs, it never happened." The two guys across the room with the steely-eyed and the gray suits stared at me as if to say, "Yeah, don't cause trouble, buddy." So having been told it didn't happen was different than being told it was classified. I was not told that, which led me later on to be able to say, I didn't sign an NDA. Wasn't told it was top secret. I was told it didn't happen. So I'll tell the story, and if you don't believe it, well, it never happened. I guess that's why I didn't go to jail.
Why do you think they brought you in there in the first place? Do you feel like it was to find out what you saw? Do you think it was to intimidate? What's your kind of sense all these years later of what the purpose was of bringing you into that room and showing you this video? Because clearly you weren't aware of what had occurred.
It's very simple. I was in charge of that tracking site. I was the officer in charge of it. Therefore, I'm the logical one to come to and say, were you guys screwing around up there? What caused this? Did you do this? Do you know anybody who did this? Because you're in deep trouble if you do. I was the officer in charge. They had to bring me in. I was the only one they brought in.
That completely makes sense. And again, you were never asked to sign an NDA.
No.
Okay.
I was just told it never happened, and I walked out of there, and for 17 years it didn't happen. I didn't talk about it.
Now, one of the things we've heard whistleblower David Grush speak about are threats of physical violence that people have experienced, that have come forward to talk about their experience, particularly in the military. And, I think it's kind of, it's a concept that I think people, it's kind of hard to wrap their heads around unless they hear about the specific sort of threats that they received and how they manifested, how it manifested themselves. And I understand that once you went public with MUFON, that you began to experience what I would characterize as pretty disturbing events.
I did indeed. I was a professor at the University of Wisconsin at Oshkosh. And I lived in a little farmhouse outside of town when I wrote the article for MUFON. Shortly after that article came out, I started getting telephone calls. Remember answering machines, those little tape things that we used to have in our phones? These voices would call and leave messages on the answering machine, like they didn't give a damn. Here's what they said. I would pick up the phone and say, hello, and I would hear this. Where you been? And I'd say, nowhere. And then I would hear, you talk too much. You're going down, motherfucker. Click. That happened 10, 15 times in a month. My girlfriend, my wife now, started hearing them too. They started maybe 2 or 3 weeks into this talking about her and what was going to happen to her because of me. And then when she and I came home from a movie in Oshkosh, we got out at our house. We went in the back door, and the answering machine was blinking. So I picked it up, and it wasn't the answering machine. It was the voice, which said, all right, where were you this time? I said, look, knock this crap off. He said, quote, fireworks in your mailbox at night. Oh, what a beautiful sight. And he hung up, and my mailbox, my rural mailbox, exploded. Boom. I bought a gun. It was becoming apparent to me that this was serious, that they meant it when they said you're going down. Going down means we're going to kill you. I talked to my friend John, I talked to Robert, in fact, and he said, the best way to deal with this now is to keep writing, keep going public. The more you get out in front of this, the less they can do to you. So I wrote another article for MUFON. I wrote a couple of articles for the newspaper near where I lived and so on. And it didn't stop. I left Oshkosh to go for another job at the University of Maine and in Orono. And I was teaching journalism and broadcast journalism. And one day my department chairman, Steve Craig, called me in and said, we're getting some complaints about you from students. And I went, well? He said, yeah, you're apparently a misogynist. You're making sexy jokes. I went, what? And also, you're apparently to be anti-Semitic. I'm a Jew. I'm anti-Semitic.
Wow.
Anyway, he terminated my contract. I had a 2-year contract. He terminated it, and I was summarily fired from my job at Maine. I had no idea what was going on. I had never told a sexist or a racist or a anti-Semitic joke in my life. but I was fired. I had my life threatened many more times than one. And I keep getting, even not today, but I kept getting while I was stationed at Oshkosh or lived there, these phone calls at night that would just the phone would ring, I pick it up, I'd go click. So it was just a continual sense of harassment, and it affected me. Though it affected me very deeply. First of all, I had believed in my country when I went in the service. I believed in the goal of what we were trying to do with missiles and rockets. I was awarded a missile man badge for, and I quote the piece of paper that with it, for making a significant contribution to America's missile and space program. I was proud of that because that's what we were doing. My guys there at Vandenberg back in those early days were setting the groundwork for the trip to the moon and everything else that's happened. We were part of it. I believed in that. I believed in our leaders. I thought I could have trusted John Kennedy. I could have trusted that idiot Lyndon Johnson. I was a naive kid. I didn't believe in UFOs. I had no sense that they were real. My writing was a relief for me in a way. When I first wrote my article about the UFO encounter, the first one I wrote was a little bit missing things. The second one I wrote was a whole long treatise on how I thought the thing might be a shot across the bow and how we need to be taking these things seriously. But I didn't believe in UFOs until that happened to me. When I saw that film in Major Mansman's office, I sat there and my mouth must have fallen open. And he said, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" I went, "No, sir." And he said, "Well, what was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO." And my mind went, "Boom, a UFO? My God, they're real? I just photographed one? Look, it's on 35 millimeter film, and my crew and I shot it. Holy cow!"
What happened to that film? What have you heard about where it went and possibly where it is today?
Okay. Major Mansman told me face to face that the CIA guys took the reel of film, spooled it off till they got the part about the UFO off, cut it off, gave him back the reel of film, and said, "You are never to talk about this again." And he said that film went back to someplace back east. Our supposition was it probably went to CIA headquarters. I don't know where it went. But for years and years, I thought, well, they probably threw it away, they burned it. And then a good friend, Lou Elizondo, told me, I was out in Los Angeles earlier this year, taking part in a documentary film, and I had just recounted my testimony. It's not a story, it's testimony about this. And Lou shouted from the room, he said, "I saw that film." And I shouted, "What film?" He said, "Your film. I saw it." So, as you know, Lou had been with ATIP, and obviously the film still existed somewhere. He saw it. I believe Dave Grush said that he believed Dave that Lou had seen it, and so it's back there somewhere. I said, I don't know. With Kirkpatrick at the helm of ARO, I don't know where it's gone. It's possible that it has been annihilated by this point.
Who knows with him?
Dave Grush told me he's going back to D.C. sometime in the next week or so. And I said, "Dave, please do something for me. Tell Dr. Kirkpatrick that Dr. Jacobs says fuck you."
I think a lot of people want to tell Kirkpatrick fuck you. So, sorry.
I do have a PhD, so I am actually Dr. Jacobs.
All right. Well, hey, Dr. Jacobs, Dr. Kirkpatrick, your fellow Dr. Jacobs says, "Fuck you." All right. I mean,
take me on, Sean. Take me on, Sean. Come and get me. Come on, you coward.
You are my new hero. Yeah. So would you, after your experience and what you viewed with Sean Kirkpatrick and ARO, should whistleblowers trust ARO?
No.